If you're trying to quit porn right now, the worst advice you can follow is try to live a balanced life. Everyone tells you that balance is the goal. It's this something that you need to achieve. But if you try to keep that same late night routine, your same habits, your same lifestyle, and you just try to subtract the addiction out of it, it's gonna make recovery so much harder. So for the first phase of recovery, your life has to be radically unbalanced. So here's why normal is your new enemy and how living an unbalanced life is actually gonna set the base for your recovery and make it that much better. Hey everybody, my name is Enoch Fossum. I'm a marriage and family therapist who specializes in addiction, specifically pornography, if you could believe it. So before we go any further, if you are looking for a therapist or a coach to help you overcome pornography for the rest of your life, then you can schedule a free consultation with me through the link down in the description. Okay, so I hear all the time from guys who are trying to quit porn. They say something like, man, I want to stop this, but I want to keep staying up late with my boys. Or, man, like the only time I get to hang out with my friends is at like 11 p.m. I hear that all the time. Or they say things like, I want to keep my same schedule, or I want to live my life normally. You know, all of this stuff that we're adding on in recovery is too hard. I don't want to do it anymore. Or it's too tedious. I'm not going to be able to keep this up the rest of my life. So listen, man, I mean, the whole idea around recovery, or the whole idea around addiction, is that you can't fix a life of addiction using the exact same framework that got you there to begin with. Addiction fills this massive void. So you can't just leave that vacuum there without filling it with anything. And so if you just try to live your same life and just take out pornography and you call that recovery, you're not going to get very far. True change requires structural change. And to build something new, the older ecosystem has to be completely disrupted and torn out. So there are so many examples of imbalance to heal in life, or really just imbalance used to achieve a certain goal. So for example, before a rocket takes off, okay, where's my rocket? Here we go. Boom, water bottle, rocket. Before a rocket takes off, it's totally balanced on the launch pad, right? But in order to even get off the ground, it has to use this massive, completely asymmetrical explosion of energy. 90% of the rocket's fuel is burned in just the first few miles of trying to get out of the atmosphere. Most of the fuel is burned just to get off the ground. And so you relate that to recovery, right? Recovery is just escaping gravity. It takes a massive amount of energy and an unbalanced effort to just get off the ground and get going. Another example, let's say you break your leg. So what do? After the hospital, after they say, yep, your tibia is sticking right out your leg, you say, all right, great, man, I'm gonna go sprint right out of the hospital, I'm gonna sprint home. No, that's not how it works. You put it in a cast, you can't really move it at all, and you have to use crutches, and even for the first while, you can't even step on it. You tilt your entire daily routine to protect that one leg. It's highly inconvenient and totally unbalanced, but that's the only way to actually get your bones to knit back completely together. So we have those two examples, and yet when it comes to recovery, people, they don't want that. They want the balance. They want to just add simple things into their life, especially at the beginning, that doesn't really disrupt their day-to-day and is something they can do over a long period of time. Now, don't get me wrong, those things are important and they're great tools, and they're things that obviously we've talked about in this show. But when it comes to the beginning parts of recovery, okay, I'm talking about the first couple of months, even within the first year is where I'm talking. Radical balance or radical imbalance has to be a thing. And so here's a part of the problem, is that your brain loves predictability, even if that predictability is toxic. So just like pornography, right? It's not great for your brain. It's not great for your social life. It's not great for your life in general. But the brain doesn't really understand that, doesn't really know that. And so it loves the whole idea of predictability, where if late at night you generally is when you PMO, right? Your brain's going to start preparing you for that. It's going to maybe have you go home a little earlier so you can start getting ready and kind of seclude yourself there for a minute. And your body can start preparing you for like hours ahead of the actual time that you're going to PMO. Your current balanced life has structurally adapted to accommodate your addiction. Your late nights, your stress levels, your social habits are all wired into this relapse loop. So to change your brain, you have to break that homeostasis, and that's the hardest part. That in and of itself is what people don't want to do, is breaking the homeostasis. Because once you start to break this balance that your brain has worked so hard to create, that's when it starts to push back. It pushes back hard, man. I mean, have you guys ever tried to break like any other habit outside of PMO? Like whether it's trying to go to the gym, trying to eat less cookies, maybe trying to eat better, trying to go to sleep at an earlier time, right? Let's say you go to bed at midnight every night. You want to go to bed at like 10. You lay there in bed at 10 for 2 hours because you can't go to bed at 10 because you've been going to bed at midnight for so long. It takes a long time, and your brain pushes back and it hates it, and it makes it really hard. So here are a couple ways that radical imbalance, here are a couple ways that radical imbalance can show up in your life. First, you have saying no to good things. So for example, you might have to say no to late nights with the boys, because you know that generally after you hang out with your friends about midnight, 1 o'clock, that's when your trigger hits. And for a time, your life might completely revolve around recovery work, going to bed earlier, eating better, intense workouts, and constant check-ins. And to an outsider, to someone who doesn't struggle with pornography, it might look like this obsession, right? Or like, dude, what in the world? You're just like, you turned into a grind bro, right? Not grinder, but a grind bro, right? You just hustle. Like, what are you doing now? You don't hang out with the boys anymore. I never see you. I can never get to hang out anymore. But to you, this is a life support system. Then you have this overall comfort shift that needs to happen. You have to accept the fact that you're going to feel bored. Life's going to feel a little lonely, restless. And at 11 p.m., choosing to sit in the discomfort of an urge, choosing to sit in that imbalance. And dude, like that can happen for a while. And that doesn't mean that your recovery is not working. In fact, that means the more bored you are, the more lonely you are for a time, and the more restless you are generally is honestly a good sign. Now, this doesn't mean that your life needs to be like that or will be like that forever, because it won't. It will get better, but for the first while, you're going to be imbalanced. So here are 3 pillars of potential imbalances that you can throw into your life. First, you have the time, the chrono shift, the chronotype shift. So the initial trap here is that you'll say, oh man, like I'm just a night owl, that's just who I am, right? I sleep in and I go to bed late, even though a lot of your triggers are at night. For the first 30 to 60 days, you might have to really consider becoming a strict 9:30 p.m. sleeper or 10:30, whatever. You just have to, when your urges happen at night, right? So ideally you want to be in bed, asleep, before that even gets a chance to happen. You're trading this freedom of staying up late for the freedom of sobriety. Use that prefrontal cortex, brother, and think the long game. Pillar number 2 is the social and environmental triggers. And so the trap here is that you might say, man, my friends, they'll think I'm weird if I leave the Discord earlier, if I'm leaving game night all the time earlier, or if I stop going to certain parties. The imbalance here is you have to over-index on your boundary setting. You might have to put your phone in a lockbox in the kitchen at night. You might have to move your computer into the living room, which is just really weird and sus. But you just do it anyway. And it doesn't have to stay in the living room forever. But for the first while, to get off the ground, maybe it needs to be. And pillar number 3 is the dopamine deficit. And we've talked about this before, but the trap here is trying to immediately replace the massive spikes of dopamine that come from porn with something equally as stimulating. And to be honest, there's not really anything that spikes your dopamine like that that's good for you, at least in over time. So the imbalance here is that your life is going to feel incredibly boring, flat, and gray. And on an emotional level, you're not going to feel like you for a while. And when that happens, people tend to freak out. They think, oh my gosh, like, what's wrong with me? Is this the porn? Like, and the answer is yes, it is the porn, but more like the lack of porn is what's doing this for you. And so come to understand that this is an imbalance that's going to be temporary. It's not going to last forever. Imbalance is a season. It's not a life sentence. And so those dailies that you're doing that feel really tedious and you don't think you can do them every day for the rest of your life, that's okay. Continue to do them to get off the ground and get a couple miles out of the atmosphere. This is really setting your base for recovery to make things more automatic and to make things easier. You can't balance a house on quicksand. It has to have a solid foundation. So this is exactly what you're doing. The imbalance is what's creating this strong foundation. Now listen, dude, if you're more protective of your current lifestyle than you are of your future freedom, you probably aren't ready to quit. True readiness means being willing to look foolish, inconvenienced, and uncomfortable to get clean and to create the life that you want. And so if you're not willing to sacrifice a few things, like late nights with the boys, I know there's probably a bunch of other things except for late nights with the boys, but if you're not willing to sacrifice those things, then you need to ask yourself, do I really want this? Like, do I really want to not have pornography in my life? Am I ready to step into this new life and become someone new? And if the answer is yes, then I think you're ready. So what I want you to think about this week, dude, is what is one area of your life that is normal that you just totally need to disrupt, that you need to make imbalanced, that's going to help you in the long run create the sobriety and overall create the life that you want. Okay, thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.